The morning Daisy Barrett watched Lucas Zimmerman ride out of Hangtown, California, with the spring cattle drive in 1878. She felt something tear inside her chest that had nothing to do with her corset laces. "Wait for me," Lucas had said, his calloused hands cupping her face as the dawn light painted everything gold and pink. "I'm coming back. 8 weeks, maybe 10 at the most. We'll drive these cattle to Sacramento, get our pay, and I'll come back with enough money to marry you proper. With a ring, a house, everything you deserve." Daisy had nodded, blinking back tears that threatened to spill over her cheeks. At 21, she had learned that life in California's gold country was unpredictable and often cruel. Men made promises they could not keep. Women waited for lovers who never returned, but looking into Lucas's green eyes, she wanted desperately to believe him. "I'll wait," she whispered. "I'll be right here when you come back." Lucas had kissed her then, long and deep, while the other cowboys whistled and called out friendly jeers. He pulled away reluctantly, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "Keep this safe for me." Then he swung up onto his bay gelding, adjusted his hat, and joined the stream of men and cattle flowing north out of town like a river of dust and leather and hope. That had been 3 months ago. Now Daisy stood in the dry goods store where she worked, arranging bolts of fabric that did not need arranging, trying not to watch the door every time it opened. The little bell above it jingled, and her heart leaped before she saw it was just Mrs. Henderson coming in for thread. "Any word from that cowboy of yours?" Mrs. Henderson asked, her voice kind but curious. Everyone in Hangtown knew about Lucas and Daisy. They had been courting for nearly a year, ever since Lucas had drifted into town looking for work and found it at the Miller Ranch just outside of town. "Not yet," Daisy said, forcing a smile. "But the cattle drives can take time. Sometimes the weather slows them down or they have to find better grazing land." Mrs. Henderson made a sympathetic noise and patted Daisy's hand. "He'll come back, dear. That boy looked at you like you hung the moon." After Mrs. Henderson left with her thread, Daisy went back to staring at the door. The truth was that she had expected Lucas back 2 weeks ago. 8 weeks had stretched into 10, then 11, now 12. The other men from the drive had started trickling back into town, dusty and tired and flush with pay, but Lucas was not among them. She had asked every single one of them about him. "Lucas?" "Sure, I know him," said Tom Rafferty, who had worked alongside Lucas at the Miller Ranch. "Good man. Hard worker. Last I saw him was in Sacramento. We all got paid out and he said he was heading straight back here. That was near 2 weeks ago." Daisy's stomach had twisted into knots. 2 weeks to ride from Sacramento to Hangtown should have taken 3 days at most. Where was he? She asked the other men, but their stories were all the same. Lucas had collected his pay, bought a few supplies, and set out for Hangtown. Then nothing. The bell above the door jingled again, and this time it was her employer, Mr. Thornton, returning from his lunch. He took one look at Daisy's face and sighed. "Miss Barrett, you're no good to me if you're going to spend all day mooning at that door." "I'm sorry, Mr. Thornton," Daisy said, straightening her spine. "I'll focus on my work." But she could not focus. Her mind kept spinning through terrible possibilities. Lucas could have been thrown from his horse and killed. He could have been robbed by bandits on the road. He could have been bitten by a rattlesnake or fallen ill with fever. Or worse, he could have simply changed his mind about her and decided not to come back at all. That last thought hurt more than any of the others. When her shift ended at 6 o'clock, Daisy walked home through the dusty streets of Hangtown, past the saloons already filling with miners and gamblers, past the boarding houses and the hotel and the church where she had imagined marrying Lucas. The evening air was warm and dry, scented with pine from the forests that surrounded the town. She lived in a small room above the bakery, which she rented from the German couple who ran it. It was not much, just a bed and a washstand and a small table with one chair, but it was hers. She had been saving money for years, planning for a future that now seemed uncertain. That night, she lay in bed and tried not to cry. She had already cried so much over the past 2 weeks that she felt wrung out like a dish rag. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of things. Lucas had promised to come back. He had looked her in the eyes and made that promise. She knew him well enough to know he was not the kind of man who made promises lightly. If he had not returned, something must have happened to him. The thought that crystallized in her mind then was sudden and clear. She needed to find him. In the morning, Daisy went to work as usual, but her mind was already made up. During her lunch break, she walked to the Miller ranch and found the foreman, Jack Miller, fixing a fence post. "Mr. Miller," she said, shading her eyes against the bright sun, "I need to ask you about Lucas Zimmerman." Jack looked up from his work, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Lucas, hell, I've been wondering about that boy myself. He's one of my best hands, should have been back by now." "I want to go look for him," Daisy said. The words came out more firmly than she felt. "But I need to know the route he would have taken from Sacramento." Jack set down his hammer and studied her. "Miss Barrett, that's rough country between here and Sacramento. Not safe for a woman traveling alone." "I'm aware of that," Daisy said. "But Lucas could be hurt somewhere, needing help. I can't just sit here doing nothing." Jack was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I suppose if someone I loved was missing, I'd want to do the same." Lucas would have taken the main road through Auburn and then cut east toward Hangtown. It's about 50 miles total. There are a few towns along the way where he might have stopped. "Thank you," Daisy said. "That's exactly what I needed to know." She turned to leave, but Jack called after her. "Miss Barrett, wait. If you're serious about this, you should at least take someone with you. It's not just the distance, it's the bandits and the wild animals and the heat. This time of year it gets hot as blazes out there." "I don't have anyone to take with me," Daisy said. "Everyone I know here is either too old or too busy, or wouldn't understand why I need to do this." Jack scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Well, I can't spare any of my men right now. We're short-handed as it is. But I can lend you a good horse and a rifle. And I can draw you a map of the route with the towns marked. That's the best I can do." "That would be wonderful," Daisy said, feeling a rush of gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Miller." That evening, Daisy packed her few belongings into a canvas bag. She had 2 simple dresses, some undergarments, a hairbrush, a canteen, and the little bit of money she had saved. She also packed some dried meat and hardtack that she bought from the general store, enough food for several days on the trail. She left a note for the German couple who owned the bakery, explaining that she had to leave suddenly and would return as soon as she could. She paid them an extra week's rent in advance, hoping that would be enough time. Then she went to Mr. Thornton and quit her job at the dry goods store. "You're making a mistake," Mr. Thornton said, shaking his head. "Chasing after some cowboy who probably just decided he liked the city better than this dusty town." "He's not some cowboy," Daisy said quietly. "He's the man I love, and he promised to come back." Mr. Thornton sighed. "If you change your mind, come back. I'll see if I can find a place for you." "Thank you," Daisy said, though she knew she would not be coming back. Not without Lucas. At dawn the next morning, she rode out of Hangtown on a sturdy roan mare that Jack Miller had lent her, with the rifle strapped to the saddle and the map tucked safely in her pocket. The early morning air was cool and fresh, and the sky was painted in shades of pink and orange. Daisy had never traveled alone before. She had never even been outside of Hangtown except for one trip to a neighboring town when she was 16. But as she urged the mare forward, following the dusty road west toward Auburn, she felt a strange sense of purpose. She was going to find Lucas, no matter what it took. The first day of riding was harder than she expected. The sun climbed high and merciless, beating down on her bonnet until sweat trickled down her temples. The horse plodded steadily along, but by midday, Daisy's thighs ached from the unfamiliar saddle and her back felt stiff as a board. She stopped by a creek to let the horse drink and to splash some cool water on her face. The map showed that Auburn was still another 10 miles ahead. She would not reach it before dark. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, Daisy found a sheltered spot among some pine trees and made camp. She had never made a fire by herself before, but she had watched Lucas do it enough times. She gathered dry twigs and pine needles, struck the flint and steel she had bought in town, and after several frustrating attempts, managed to coax a small flame to life. She warmed some of the dried meat over the fire and ate it with a piece of hardtack, washing it down with water from her canteen. Then she sat with her back against a tree, the rifle across her lap, and listened to the sounds of the forest at night. Owls hooted in the distance. Something rustled in the underbrush, probably a raccoon or a fox. The horse nickered softly, tied to a nearby tree. Daisy did not sleep much that night. Every sound made her jump, and she kept imagining bandits or wild animals creeping up on her in the darkness. But nothing happened, and when dawn finally broke, she was relieved to pack up her meager camp and get back on the road. She reached Auburn by mid-morning. It was a larger town than Hangtown, with several hotels and saloons and a bustling main street. Daisy tied her horse outside the first saloon she came to and went inside. The bartender was a burly man with a thick mustache who eyed her with surprise when she approached. Women did not usually come into saloons alone. "Excuse me," Daisy said, trying to sound confident. "I'm looking for someone, a cowboy named Lucas Zimmerman. He would have come through here about 2 weeks ago, heading east toward Hangtown." The bartender shook his head. "Sorry, miss, I see a lot of cowboys come through here. Can't say I remember anyone by that name." Daisy tried several more saloons and hotels, asking the same question each time. Most people shook their heads or gave her vague answers that did not help, but at the fourth hotel the clerk's eyes lit up with recognition. Lucas Zimmerman. Tall fellow, dark hair, green eyes. "Yes," Daisy said, her heart racing. "That's him. Did you see him?" "He stayed here one night," the clerk said, flipping through a ledger. "2 weeks ago, just like you said. Checked in late, checked out early the next morning, said he was heading to Hangtown." "Did he seem all right?" Daisy asked. "Was he hurt or sick?" "No, he seemed fine. In a hurry, though. Like he had somewhere important to be." Daisy thanked the clerk and left the hotel, her mind racing. So Lucas had made it to Auburn safely. That was good news. But it still left over 40 miles between Auburn and Hangtown unaccounted for. She bought some more supplies in Auburn, fresh bread and cheese and some apples, then mounted her horse and continued east. According to the map, there was a small settlement called Cherokee Flat about halfway between Auburn and Hangtown. If Lucas had stopped there, someone might remember him. The afternoon was brutally hot, and Daisy's skin felt sunburned despite her bonnet. She stopped frequently to rest the horse and to drink water, rationing it carefully because she did not know when she would find another creek. By the time she reached Cherokee Flat, the sun was setting again. The settlement was barely more than a handful of buildings, a trading post, a small saloon, and a few houses scattered among the pines. Daisy went into the trading post, where an elderly woman sat behind the counter, smoking a pipe. "Evening," the woman said, eyeing Daisy with interest. "You look like you've been riding hard." "I'm looking for someone," Daisy said, launching into her now familiar explanation about Lucas. The woman's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Lucas Zimmerman. Can't say the name rings a bell. But there was a fellow came through here about 2 weeks back. Looked like he'd been in some trouble. Had a nasty cut on his arm, asked me for some bandages." Daisy's blood ran cold. "What did he look like?" "Tall, dark hair. Couldn't see his eyes too well, it was near dark when he came in. But he seemed in a hurry, bought the bandages, some whiskey, and rode out." "Which direction did he go?" "East," the woman said. "Toward Hangtown." Daisy's mind spun with worry. Lucas had been hurt. Not badly enough to stop riding, apparently, but hurt nonetheless. What had happened to him? "Did he say anything about what caused the injury?" Daisy asked. The woman shook her head. "Wasn't much for talking. But I got the impression he'd been in some kind of fight. Had that look about him, you know. Wary, like he was expecting trouble." Daisy thanked the woman and bought a room for the night at the saloon next door. It was a tiny room with a lumpy bed, but she was too exhausted to care. She fell asleep almost immediately and did not wake until the sun was already high in the sky. She rode out of Cherokee Flat feeling both encouraged and terrified. She was on the right track. Lucas had definitely come this way, but he had been hurt, and something had spooked him. What if whatever had hurt him was still out there on the road? The terrain between Cherokee Flat and Hangtown was rugged and wild, with steep hills and dense forests. Daisy urged the mare forward, her eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of Lucas or trouble. Around midday, as she rounded a bend in the road, she saw something that made her heart stop. There, lying in the dirt about 20 feet off the trail, was a horse. Even from a distance she could see it was dead. Daisy dismounted and approached cautiously, leading her horse by the reins. As she got closer, she recognized the saddle. It was the same kind of saddle Lucas had been using when he left Hangtown. Her hands shook as she examined the saddle more closely. There was Lucas's initials, carved into the leather of the saddlebag just like he had shown her once. This was definitely his horse. But there was no sign of Lucas himself. Daisy looked around wildly, her breath coming in short gasps. The horse had clearly been dead for a while, maybe a week or more. There were buzzard tracks in the dirt around it. But what had killed it? She knelt down and examined the animal more carefully. There was a wound in its side, long healed over but visible beneath the dried blood. It looked like a bullet wound. Someone had shot Lucas's horse. Daisy stood up, her legs trembling. If someone had shot the horse, what had they done to Lucas? She forced herself to think logically. If Lucas had been killed, his body would be here too. But it was not. That meant he had survived whatever happened here. He had survived and continued on foot. She looked around again, this time searching for any sign of which direction he might have gone. The brush was thick here, and there were dozens of animal trails leading off in all directions. But one trail, leading east toward Hangtown, showed signs of recent disturbance. Broken branches, disturbed earth. Daisy remounted her horse and followed the trail carefully. It was slow going through the thick brush, and she had to dismount several times to lead the horse through particularly dense areas. But she kept going, driven by a desperate need to find Lucas. After about an hour, the trail emerged onto a small clearing. And there, slumped against a tree, was Lucas. Daisy screamed his name and ran toward him, dropping the horse's reins. She fell to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch his face. He was alive. Barely. His skin was burning with fever, and his breathing was shallow and ragged. The wound on his arm that the woman in Cherokee Flat had mentioned was infected, swollen and angry looking. He had also been shot, she realized with horror. There was a crude bandage wrapped around his torso, soaked through with old blood. "Lucas," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Lucas, please wake up. It's me. It's Daisy." His eyelids fluttered, and for a moment his green eyes focused on her face. "Daisy." His voice was barely a whisper. "Am I dead? Are you an angel?" "You're not dead," Daisy said, trying to sound calm even though her heart was pounding. "And I'm no angel. I'm here, I'm real, and I'm going to get you help." "You should not be here," Lucas mumbled, his eyes closing again. "Too dangerous. They're out there, the bandits." "I don't care about bandits," Daisy said fiercely. "I care about you. Now stay with me, do you hear me? Stay awake." But Lucas had already slipped back into unconsciousness. Daisy's mind raced. She was at least a day's ride from Hangtown, maybe more if she had to go slowly because of Lucas's condition. She could not move him by herself. He was too heavy and too injured. But she could not leave him here either. She forced herself to think practically. First, she needed to get his fever down and clean his wounds. Then she could figure out how to get him back to town. She ran back to her horse and retrieved the supplies she had brought. She had a little bit of whiskey left, some clean cloth for bandages, and her canteen. It was not much, but it would have to do. She built a fire, boiled some water to clean the wounds, and carefully peeled away the bloodied bandages. The bullet wound in his torso looked bad, but it had gone clean through, which was good. The real problem was the infection in his arm. Daisy cleaned both wounds as best as she could, wincing every time Lucas groaned in pain, even in his unconscious state. She poured whiskey over the wounds to disinfect them, then wrapped them in clean bandages torn from one of her petticoats. Then she wetted a cloth with cool water and laid it across his forehead, trying to bring down the fever. She sat beside him for hours, changing the cloth regularly, forcing water between his lips whenever he was conscious enough to swallow. Night fell and she kept the fire burning bright, both for warmth and to ward off any predators. Around midnight, Lucas's eyes opened again. This time they were clearer, more focused. "Daisy," he whispered. "You really are here." "I really am," she said, taking his hand. "I came looking for you. You promised you would come back, and when you did not, I knew something must have happened." "I tried," Lucas said, his voice weak but earnest. "I tried so hard to get back to you, but there were bandits on the road. They wanted my pay from the cattle drive. I fought them off, but one of them shot me and killed my horse. I've been trying to walk back ever since, but the wound got infected and I could not go on." "SHH," Daisy said, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "Don't talk. You need to save your strength." "I need to tell you," Lucas insisted. "I need you to know I did not break my promise. I was coming back. I am coming back, even if I have to crawl." "I know," Daisy said, tears streaming down her face again. "I never doubted you, not for a second." That was not entirely true. She had doubted him in her darkest moments, but she knew now that her doubts had been unfounded. Lucas had been true to his word. He had fought to come back to her. "We need to get you to a doctor," Daisy said, "but I cannot carry you by myself." "Can you ride if I help you onto the horse?" Lucas tried to sit up and gasped in pain, falling back against the tree. "I don't know. Everything hurts." "I know it does," Daisy said gently, "but we have to try. If we stay out here much longer, you're going to die. And I did not ride all this way just to watch you die." Something in her voice must have reached him, because Lucas nodded. "All right, help me up." It took nearly an hour to get Lucas onto the horse. Daisy had to practically carry him, and every movement made him cry out in pain. But finally, he was seated in the saddle, slumped forward over the horse's neck. Daisy climbed up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist to keep him steady. Then she urged the horse forward, back toward the main road. They traveled through the night, moving slowly and carefully. Lucas drifted in and out of consciousness. and several times Daisy had to stop to make sure he had not fallen off the horse. Dawn was breaking when they finally reached the outskirts of Hangtown. Daisy was so exhausted she could barely see straight, but relief flooded through her at the sight of the familiar buildings. She rode straight to the doctor's house and pounded on the door until Dr. Matthews, a kindly older man with gray hair and spectacles, opened it in his nightshirt. "Miss Barrett," he said in surprise. "What on earth? Please help him," Daisy said, her voice breaking. "He's been shot and the wound is infected. He's burning up with fever. Please, you have to save him." Dr. Matthews took one look at Lucas and snapped into action. He helped Daisy get Lucas inside and onto his examination table, then immediately set to work cleaning and treating the wounds. "You did a good job with these bandages," Dr. Matthews said as he worked. "Probably saved his life by cleaning the wounds when you did, but this infection is serious. I'll need to keep him here for several days, maybe longer." "Whatever it takes," Daisy said. "I'll pay whatever it costs." "We'll worry about payment later," Dr. Matthews said kindly. "Right now, let's focus on getting this young man well." Daisy stayed at the doctor's house for 3 days straight, refusing to leave Lucas's side. She slept in a chair next to his bed, holding his hand, talking to him even when he was unconscious, telling him about how she had tracked him down and how much she loved him and how he had to get better because they had a wedding to plan. On the 3rd day, the fever finally broke. Lucas opened his eyes and looked at her with recognition and something that looked like wonder. "You saved my life," he said. "You would have done the same for me," Daisy replied, squeezing his hand. "Marry me," Lucas said suddenly. Daisy laughed through her tears. "We've been engaged for months, remember? No, I mean marry me now, as soon as I can stand up. I don't want to waste any more time. Life's too short and I almost lost mine. I want to be your husband, Daisy. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." "Yes," Daisy said, her heart soaring. "Yes, I'll marry you. I would marry you right now if you were not lying in a sick bed." Lucas grinned, the first real smile she had seen from him since she found him. "Give me a week. I'll be on my feet and ready to stand before that preacher." It took 2 weeks, not 1, before Dr. Matthews would allow Lucas to leave his care. But as soon as he did, Lucas insisted on going straight to the church to speak with Reverend Thompson about arranging a wedding. The Reverend, a cheerful man with rosy cheeks and a booming voice, was delighted to help. "I've been waiting for you two to set a date ever since you started courting," he said. "How about this Sunday? That gives us 4 days to prepare." "That's perfect," Lucas said, taking Daisy's hand. Those 4 days passed in a blur of preparation. Daisy bought fabric from the dry goods store where she used to work and sewed herself a simple but pretty wedding dress in cream-colored cotton. Lucas, still recovering from his wounds but improving every day, used the money from the cattle drive that he had managed to hide from the bandits to buy a small house on the edge of town. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it had a good roof and a wood stove and a little garden plot out back. "It's not a palace," Lucas said as he showed it to Daisy, "but it's ours." "It's perfect," Daisy said, walking through the rooms and imagining their life together. She could picture a table and chairs in the kitchen, curtains on the windows, maybe someday a cradle in the bedroom. On Sunday morning, Daisy stood in front of the small mirror in her rented room and looked at herself in her wedding dress. She had pinned her dark hair up and woven in some wildflowers that she had picked that morning. She looked happy, she realized. Genuinely, deeply happy. The wedding was small and simple. Most of the town turned out, because everyone loved a good celebration, and there was not much entertainment in Hangtown. Daisy walked down the aisle of the little church on Jack Miller's arm, since she had no family of her own in town. Lucas stood at the altar in his best suit, looking handsome despite the pallor that still lingered from his illness. When Reverend Thompson asked if anyone objected to the marriage, the church was silent except for the sound of someone's baby crying in the back row. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Thompson said with a broad smile. "Lucas, you may kiss your bride." Lucas cupped Daisy's face in his hands, just like he had done the morning he rode out on the cattle drive, and kissed her deeply. The church erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception afterward, held in the yard behind the church with tables laden with food that the townspeople had contributed, Jack Miller raised his glass in a toast. "To Lucas and Daisy," he said. "Two people who remind us all what it means to keep a promise and to fight for the ones we love. May your marriage be long and happy." Everyone drank to that, and then the celebration continued with music and dancing. Lucas, still recovering, could not dance much, but he held Daisy close for one slow waltz, his arms wrapped around her waist. "I'm sorry I put you through so much worry," he murmured in her ear. "I'm not," Daisy said. "Not really, because it showed me how much you mean to me, and it showed me how strong I am. I never knew I could do the things I did to find you." "You're the strongest woman I know," Lucas said. "And the bravest. And I'm the luckiest man alive." That night, in their little house on the edge of town, Lucas carried Daisy over the threshold despite his still healing wounds. She protested, worried he would hurt himself, but he just laughed. "I've been dreaming of doing this for months," he said. "A couple of bullet wounds are not going to stop me now." He set her down gently in the middle of their bedroom, and they stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. The room was lit by a single lantern, casting soft shadows on the walls. "I love you, Daisy Zimmerman," Lucas said, testing out her new name. "I love you too," Daisy replied. And then there were no more words, just the two of them finally together, finally married, finally beginning the life they had both dreamed of. The next morning, Daisy woke up wrapped in Lucas's arms, the sun streaming through the window and painting everything golden. She felt a contentment she had never known before, a sense of rightness that settled deep in her bones. Lucas stirred beside her and opened his eyes. "Good morning, Mrs. Zimmerman." "Good morning, Mr. Zimmerman," Daisy replied, and they both grinned like fools. Over the following weeks and months, they settled into married life. Lucas recovered fully from his wounds, though he would always carry the scars. He went back to work at the Miller Ranch, and Daisy took a job at the bakery downstairs from where she used to rent her room. The German couple who owned it were getting older and needed help with the heavy work of baking. Daisy discovered she had a talent for making bread and pastries. Her cinnamon rolls became famous in Hangtown, and people would line up outside the bakery on Saturday mornings to buy them fresh from the oven. Lucas proved to be as good a husband as Daisy had hoped. He was kind and patient and hard-working. Every evening, he came home from the ranch and washed up before dinner, and then they would sit together on their little porch and watch the sun set over the pine-covered hills. They talked about everything during those evening conversations. Their childhoods, their dreams for the future, the little details of their days. Lucas told her about the horses he was training and the cattle he was tending. Daisy told him about the customers who came into the bakery and the new recipes she was trying. One evening, about 6 months after their wedding, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Lucas took Daisy's hand. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what happened on the road when those bandits attacked me, about how close I came to dying without ever getting back to you." "Don't think about that," Daisy said, squeezing his hand. "You did get back. We're here together." "I know," Lucas said, "but it made me realize something. Life is precious and unpredictable. We need to make the most of every moment we have." "I agree," Daisy said. "So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we start trying for a baby," Lucas said, his green eyes serious. "I want to have children with you, Daisy. I want to fill this house with love and laughter and the sound of little feet running around." Daisy felt tears prick her eyes. She had wanted children for as long as she could remember, but she had been afraid to bring it up, worried it was too soon or that Lucas was not ready. "I want that too," she whispered. "More than anything." Lucas pulled her into his arms and held her close. "Then let's not wait any longer." 8 months later, on a warm spring morning in 1879, Daisy gave birth to their first child. It was a long and difficult labor, and there were moments when Dr. Matthews looked worried, but finally, as the sun rose over Hangtown, a baby's cry filled the little house. "It's a boy, Doctor," Matthews announced, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket and handing him to Daisy. Daisy looked down at her son, at his tiny red face and his shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. Lucas, who had been pacing nervously in the other room, rushed in and knelt beside the bed. "He's perfect," Lucas breathed, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. The baby's fingers immediately wrapped around Lucas's finger, holding tight. "What should we name him?" Daisy asked. They had discussed names during Daisy's pregnancy, but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Lucas said, "What about Samuel, after my father?" "Samuel Zimmerman," Daisy said, testing it out. "I like it. Hello, Samuel." The baby blinked up at her with eyes that were still the unclear blue of all newborns, and Daisy knew that her life had changed forever in the best possible way. Being new parents was harder than either of them had expected. Samuel was a fussy baby who did not like to sleep and cried often, especially at night. Daisy was exhausted, running on little sleep and trying to balance taking care of the baby with her work at the bakery. Lucas helped as much as he could, coming home from the ranch and taking Samuel so Daisy could rest. He would walk the floor with the crying baby, singing soft cowboy songs until Samuel finally settled. "You're good at this," Daisy said one night, watching Lucas rock Samuel in his arms. "I had a lot of practice," Lucas said. "I helped raise my younger siblings after my mother died. I know it's not easy, but we'll figure it out together." And they did. Slowly, they found their rhythm as parents. Samuel grew from a fussy newborn into a chubby, happy baby who smiled and cooed and loved being held. Daisy cut back her hours at the bakery so she could spend more time with him, and Lucas tried to be home for dinner every night. The months turned into years. Samuel learned to crawl, then to walk, then to run. He was a curious, energetic child who got into everything and kept his parents constantly on their toes. When Samuel was 3 years old, Daisy discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and when she gave birth in the fall of 1882, it was a quicker labor that resulted in a healthy baby girl. "She looks like you," Lucas said, cradling his daughter and marveling at her tiny features. "Let's name her Rose," Daisy said. "After the wildflowers I had in my hair when we got married." "Rose Zimmerman," Lucas said. "It's beautiful. She's beautiful." Rose was a calmer baby than Samuel had been, content to sleep and eat and watch the world with wide, curious eyes. Samuel was fascinated by his little sister and wanted to help with everything, from changing her diapers to feeding her bottles of milk. The house that had once seemed spacious now felt small with 4 people living in it, but somehow they made it work. Lucas built an addition onto the back of the house, adding another bedroom so Samuel and Rose could each have their own space as they grew older. Life in Hangtown continued its steady rhythm. Lucas became the foreman at the Miller Ranch when Jack Miller retired, which meant better pay and more responsibility. Daisy eventually bought the bakery from the German couple when they decided to move back east to live with their daughter. She ran it successfully, employing 2 young women from town to help with the baking and the customers. They were happy. Not in a fairy tale way where everything was perfect all the time, but in a real, grounded way. They had arguments sometimes, usually about money or how to discipline the children, or whose turn it was to get up with a crying child in the middle of the night. But they always worked through it, always came back together, because the love they had built was stronger than any temporary frustration. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1888, Lucas surprised Daisy by taking her on a trip to Sacramento. It was the first time they had been away from Hangtown together since their wedding, and the first time they had left the children overnight. Samuel, now 9, and Rose, now 6, stayed with Jack Miller and his wife, who were delighted to have them. Sacramento had grown since Lucas had last been there after the cattle drive. It was a real city now, with electric streetlights and tall buildings and more people than Daisy had ever seen in one place. Lucas took her to a fancy restaurant where they ate steak and potatoes and drank wine. Then they went to their hotel, a grand place with a chandelier in the lobby and a doorman who tipped his hat to them. "This must have cost a fortune," Daisy said as they climbed the stairs to their room. "It did," Lucas admitted, "but you're worth it. You've given me 10 years of happiness, Daisy. 10 years of love and laughter, and a family I never thought I'd have. I wanted to do something special for you." Their room had a big bed with a real mattress, not the straw-ticked mattress they had at home, and a private bathroom with running water. Daisy felt like a queen. That night, lying in Lucas's arms in the fancy hotel bed, Daisy thought back to the girl she had been 10 years ago, watching Lucas ride out with the cattle drive. That girl had been so afraid of losing him, so uncertain about the future. Now, as a woman of 31 with 2 children and a successful business and a husband she loved more every day, Daisy felt grateful for every moment that had brought her here. Even the hard moments, even the terrifying days when she had searched for Lucas and found him half dead in the wilderness. All of it had been worth it. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, his fingers trailing through her hair. "About how lucky I am," Daisy said. "About how much I love you." "I love you too," Lucas said, "more than anything in this world." They made love slowly and tenderly, relearning each other's bodies the way they had when they were first married. Afterward, Daisy fell asleep with her head on Lucas's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The next day, they explored Sacramento together, walking hand in hand through the streets like young lovers. They bought gifts for the children, a toy train for Samuel and a porcelain doll for Rose. They ate ice cream from a street vendor and watched a traveling theater troupe perform in the park. On the train ride back to Hangtown, Daisy leaned against Lucas's shoulder and smiled. "We should do this every year," she said. "Every year," Lucas agreed. "I promise." And he kept that promise just like he had kept his promise to come back to her all those years ago. Every year on their anniversary, they found a way to get away together, even if it was just for a day trip to Auburn or a picnic in the hills above Hangtown. The years continued to pass. Samuel grew into a tall, serious boy who loved books and mathematics. Rose was more outgoing, always making friends and organizing games with the other children in town. Daisy and Lucas watched their children grow with pride and wonder, marveling at how quickly time seemed to move. When Samuel was 15 and Rose was 12, Daisy discovered she was pregnant again. It was a surprise. She had assumed she was too old for more children, but the doctor confirmed it. She was going to have a baby at the age of 36. "Are we ready to do this again?" she asked Lucas nervously. "We're not as young as we used to be." "We're going to be wonderful," Lucas said, pulling her close. "We've done this twice before. We know what we're doing now." The pregnancy was harder than her previous two. Daisy was tired all the time and her back ached constantly. But in the spring of 1891, she gave birth to another healthy baby boy. They named him Daniel, and he had Lucas's green eyes and Daisy's dark hair. Samuel and Rose were wonderful with their baby brother, old enough now to really help take care of him. Samuel would hold Daniel and read to him from his books, and Rose would sing lullabies and make up stories. "Our family is complete now," Daisy said one evening, watching her three children together in the living room. Samuel was reading, Rose was playing with her doll, and baby Daniel was asleep in his cradle. "It's perfect," Lucas agreed, wrapping his arm around her waist. They stood there together, watching their children, feeling the weight and the joy of all they had built together. More years passed. Samuel went away to university in San Francisco to study engineering, sending letters home every week about his classes and his new life in the city. Rose became a teacher at the schoolhouse in Hangtown, loved by all her students for her patience and creativity. Daniel grew from a baby into a rambunctious little boy who loved horses and wanted to be a cowboy just like his father. Lucas and Daisy grew older together. Gray started to thread through their hair. Lines appeared around their eyes and mouths, earned from years of laughter and sun and life. But they were still as in love as they had been that morning when Lucas rode out on the cattle drive and promised to come back. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were busy with their own activities, Lucas and Daisy would sit on their porch and talk about that time. About how Daisy had ridden out alone to find him, about how close they had come to losing everything before their life together had even really begun. "I still can't believe you did that," Lucas would say. "Rode out by yourself to find me. It was so dangerous." "I had to," Daisy would reply. "You promised to come back, and I trusted that promise. So when you didn't come back, I knew something was wrong. I couldn't just sit and wait." "You saved my life," Lucas would say, like he had said 100 times before. "You saved mine too," Daisy would respond, "just by keeping your promise. Just by fighting to come back to me." On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1903, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Samuel came home from San Francisco with a young woman he was courting, a smart, pretty girl who worked as a secretary. Rose brought her fiancé, a young rancher from a neighboring town. Daniel, now 12, helped his mother bake a huge anniversary cake. The celebration was held in the backyard of the house, which Lucas and Daisy had expanded and improved over the years. There was a long table laden with food, and lanterns strung between the trees, and music from a fiddle player that Jack Miller had hired for the occasion. All of Hangtown seemed to turn out for the party. Dr. Matthews was there, now very old but still sharp as a tack. The reverend who had married them had passed away, but the new reverend came to offer his congratulations. Former employees from the bakery and ranch hands who had worked with Lucas all came to celebrate. As the sun set and the lanterns glowed warm in the gathering dusk, Lucas stood up and called for everyone's attention. "I want to say a few words," he announced, and the crowd quieted. 25 years ago, I made a promise to the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I promised I'd come back from a cattle drive and marry her. I promised I'd love her and take care of her for the rest of my life." He turned to look at Daisy, who was standing beside him with tears already streaming down her face. "I kept that promise," Lucas continued. "Even when bandits shot me and I lost my horse, and I thought I might die out there in the wilderness. I kept fighting because I had to get back to you. And then you came and found me, because you're braver and stronger than I ever knew." He took Daisy's hand and raised it to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "These 25 years with you have been the best years of my life," Lucas said. "You've given me 3 wonderful children, a home filled with love, and more happiness than any man deserves. I promise you another 25 years, and another 25 after that if God grants us the time. I love you, Daisy Zimmerman, today and always." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Daisy threw her arms around Lucas and kissed him, not caring that everyone was watching. "I love you too," she whispered against his lips. "Forever and always." They danced together as the fiddle played, holding each other close while their children and friends and neighbors celebrated around them. The stars came out one by one, filling the sky with light, and Daisy thought about how far they had come from that morning when Lucas had ridden away with the cattle drive. She had trusted him to come back, and he had. Even when it seemed impossible, even when he was wounded and alone and far from home, he had fought his way back to her. And when he did not make it all the way, she had gone to find him, discovering a strength and courage she had not known she possessed. Their love had been tested by distance and danger, and the simple challenges of building a life together. But it had survived and thrived, growing deeper and stronger with every passing year. As the party continued around them, Lucas leaned down and whispered in Daisy's ear, "Still glad you waited for me." Daisy laughed and looked up at her husband, at the lines around his eyes and the gray in his hair and the love shining in his green eyes. "I'd wait for you forever," she said. "But I'm glad I didn't have to." The years that followed their 25th anniversary were good ones, filled with the joy of watching their children build their own lives. Samuel married his sweetheart from San Francisco and became a successful engineer, designing bridges and buildings across California. Rose married her rancher and gave Daisy and Lucas their first grandchildren, twin girls who looked exactly like Rose had at that age. Daniel, as he grew into a young man, proved to be a natural horseman and took over more and more of the responsibilities at the ranch, eventually becoming foreman himself when Lucas decided to step back. Lucas and Daisy grew old together gracefully. In their 60s, they finally sold the bakery and Lucas retired from the ranch. They spent their days working in their garden, taking walks through the hills they loved, and spoiling their growing number of grandchildren. Daniel eventually married a quiet, kind young woman named Emma who worked at the general store, and they gave Daisy and Lucas 2 more grandchildren to dote on. The house that had once held just Lucas and Daisy now regularly overflowed with children and grandchildren, especially on holidays and special occasions. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1918, Lucas and Daisy sat on their porch in the evening, just the 2 of them. Their children had thrown them a party earlier in the day, but now everyone had gone home and it was just them again, like it had been so many times over the years. 40 years, Daisy said, shaking her head in wonder. "Where did the time go?" "I don't know," Lucas said, taking her hand. His fingers were gnarled now with arthritis, but his grip was still strong. "But I wouldn't change a moment of it. Not even the part where you got shot by bandits and almost died," Daisy teased. Lucas laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "Well, maybe I'd change that part. But even that worked out all right in the end. You came and saved me, and I got to see just how remarkable you are." "I've always been remarkable," Daisy said with mock seriousness. "You just finally noticed." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the familiar landscape of Hangtown. The town had changed over the years, growing larger and more modern, but the essence of it remained the same. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come looking for me?" Lucas asked suddenly. "If you'd just assumed I wasn't coming back and moved on with your life?" "Sometimes," Daisy admitted, "but I don't like to think about it, because I can't imagine my life without you in it. You're in every good memory I have, Lucas. You're in every happy moment. Our children, our grandchildren, this house, this life, all of it exists because I trusted you to keep your promise, and because I loved you enough to go find you when something went wrong. I'm glad you did, Lucas said softly. I'm glad you didn't give up on me. I never could have, Daisy said. You're my heart, Lucas Zimmerman. You have been since the day you first asked to court me. Lucas stood up slowly, his joints creaking with age, and held out his hand to Daisy. Dance with me. There's no music, Daisy pointed out, but she took his hand anyway and let him pull her to her feet. We don't need music, Lucas said, wrapping his arms around her waist. We never have. They swayed together on the porch in the fading light. Two old people who had loved each other for 40 years and would love each other for however many years they had left. They moved slowly, carefully, their bodies not as limber as they once were, but their hearts still beating in perfect rhythm. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Daisy rested her head against Lucas's chest and listened to his heartbeat. That same steady heartbeat she had listened to on their wedding night and countless nights since. Wait for me, Lucas murmured, echoing the words he had said all those years ago. If I go first, wait for me on the other side. I will, Daisy promised, but you better not go first. We're leaving this world together, old man, Lucas chuckled. That sounds just about perfect to me. They continued to sway together as night fell completely, wrapped in each other's arms, grateful for every moment they had been given, for every trial they had overcome, for the life and the love they had built together through faith and determination, and a promise kept against all odds. Lucas lived to the age of 72, passing peacefully in his sleep on a cool autumn morning in 1924. Daisy, as if she could not bear to be without him for long, followed him just 18 months later at the age of 67. They were buried side by side in the Hangtown Cemetery under a simple headstone that read, Lucas and Daisy Zimmerman, together always. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would gather at their graves on anniversaries and holidays, telling stories about the couple who had loved each other so deeply. The story of how Daisy had ridden out alone to find Lucas when he failed to return from the cattle drive became a family legend, passed down through generations as an example of true love and unwavering faith. The little house on the edge of Hangtown stayed in the family for decades, eventually becoming home to Daniel's children and then his grandchildren. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun was setting and the air was soft with the promise of night, people said you could still feel the love that Lucas and Daisy had built there, a love so strong it had endured through hardship and danger and the simple passage of time, a love that proved that some promises are worth keeping no matter what the cost, and that true love really can conquer all.